With all of the evidence evolutionists seem to think they have, one of the big challenges to their dogma is the history of civilization. If humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, isn't it a little coincidental that civilizations just happen to appear in geographically isolated locations around the world in the same short window of time less than 10,000 years ago? It's as if humans didn't even exist before this time. Kinda puts a fly in the ointment, doesn't it? Let's investigate. Throughout the archaeological record, whenever we find civilizations, they are already fully developed, showing art, writing, and architecture. The Chinese culture first appears around 4,100 years ago. The Indus Valley Harappan culture appears around 4,600 years ago. Even the Mayans appear around 4,700 years ago, with the Egyptian culture appearing around 5,000 years ago. It would be up to you to decide if 1,000 years is a short period of time, but you'll also need to double that to include the Mesopotamian cultures, which appeared around 6,000 years ago. What most people rarely discuss is that each of these civilizations are preceded by less advanced cultures. For example, the Egyptian civilization was preceded by the Naqada Culture, which appeared around 6,400 years ago. The Naqada were distinguished with black-topped and painted pottery, writing, elaborate graves, and long-distance trade with Nubians to the south, and even obsidian from Ethiopia. The end of this civilization was marked by the beginning of dynastic Egypt. The Chinese culture was preceded by the Dadiwan Culture appearing around 7,800 years ago, and in turn, the Jiahu, Peiligang, and Pengtoushan cultures dating back to 9,500 years ago. These early proto-civilizations are noted for their early use of writing, permanent residences, communal workspaces, and flutes believed to be among the oldest playable musical instruments ever found. The Indus Valley Harappan civilization is preceded by the Mehrgarh and Barana cultures beginning around 9,500 years ago. These cultures were both distinguished by permanent residences and the eventual development of plastering for the walls of these residences. Both cultures are separated into several periods of noticeable development, which included a precursor to plumbing and even proto-dentistry. The Mayan civilization was preceded by the appearance of the Valdivian culture around 5,000 years ago, which emerged from the Las Vegas culture, which appeared around 10,000 years ago. In the 31 known Las Vegas archaeological sites, the development of agriculture can be seen as they eventually began cultivating maize. The Mesopotamian civilization was preceded by the Samara culture, which appeared around 7,500 years ago. The Samara culture was in turn preceded by the Natufian culture, which began around 14,500 years ago. This is another culture that eventually developed agriculture, but began as a hunter-gatherer society. It is unclear whether they developed agriculture independently or by trading with the nearby Mashabian culture, which dates back to 16,000 years ago. Previous to that, we find several hunter-gatherer settlements, like the various North American cultures, which can be traced back to Proto-Indians beginning around 20,000 years ago, or the Ohalo village near the Sea of Galilee, which dates to 22,000 years ago. The oldest known settlements in the Indus Valley are the Bembetka rock shelters, which date to 32,000 years ago. The development of civilization was anything but sudden. The origin of civilization is, without question, agriculture. In the last episode, we discussed the carrying capacity of an area. The carrying capacity being the limit to which a population can occupy an area without exhausting resources and having to move on or die out. Early hunter-gatherer societies, like most today, were nomadic, moving on to more vegetation or following herds and living in temporary shelters. Eventually, hunter-gatherer societies were able to become semi-nomadic or even fully sedentary, settling on fertile riverbanks such as the Nile, Euphrates, Indus, Amazon, and Yellow rivers. In these lush areas, small villages were able to settle down, build permanent homes, and take the time to notice the occasional seed germination. With agriculture, an area can support significantly more individuals while using considerably fewer resources. It also allowed other members of the culture to specialize in other trades like textiles, toolmaking, and the arts. As farming and all these other trades improved, these cultures suddenly had surplus food and products, which enabled them to trade with other cultures. The main engine that fires a civilization is trade. As a culture becomes a larger center for trade, it benefits from the innovations of its surrounding cultures. This accelerates the development of cultures into full-blown civilizations. One of the main developments that allowed for the rapid growth of civilizations is fermentation. Once humans were able to ferment grains into beer and other alcohols, they suddenly had a method of keeping water relatively sterile, as they had to travel further further and further to be able to trade in increasingly larger centers of trade, by now known as cities. To this day, the advent of civilization has given us the benefits of collaborative thought on subjects like medicine, sanitation, industry, technology, and even religion, among others. Perhaps it's no coincidence, as world population accelerates, so do all of these disciplines. As I said before, there is apparently nothing sudden about civilization. It developed right along with us over millennia. Looking into this history is just another example of how creationism taught me real science.
Learn more about the real science behind other creationist arguments by watching other episodes. If there's a creationist argument you think I should investigate, please comment below. It may be the subject of a later video. In the meantime, subscribe and make sure you don't miss it.